Hi, and welcome to the Dynamic Duel podcast, a weekly show where we review superhero films and debate the superiority between Marvel and DC by comparing their characters in stat-based battle simulations. I'm Marvelous Joe.
And I'm his twin brother, Johnny DC.
And in this episode, we're going to find out who would win in a fight between the Flash villain, Weather Wizard, and the Hulk/Thor villain, the Absorbing Man. Basically, it's a guy who can control the elements versus a guy who can become the elements. Should be pretty interesting.
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to have to play some 4D chess in this speculation, just thinking 3 steps ahead.
I live my whole life that way, so, I'm ready for this. I'm ready. We're going to find out who's going to win later on this episode. Before that, we're going to break down the comic book movie news to come out this past week, including the awesome news that Black Panther Wakanda Forever has won an Academy Award for Best Costume Design. We also got amazing, incredible news that Jon Bernthal will be returning as Frank Castle the Punisher for the Daredevil Born Again series on Disney+. All good things. Really can't wait to talk about it. As always, we list our segment times in our episode description, so feel free to check out the show notes if you want to skip ahead to a particular topic.
For those of you who listened to our last episode, Madame Rouge versus Mystique, you'll know that our duel simulator has become so advanced that it gained sentience, and it's named itself the artificial life form for running extensive duels, just a rather very intelligent simulator 9000, or Alfred Jarvis 9000. He has a quick message for our listeners, so let's hear it.
Why, hello there. Do you love listening and chatting about Marvel and DC? Then become a part of the Dynamic Duel community on Patreon, where you can choose from 3 tiers. The Dynamic 2.0 tier lets you listen to this podcast without ads and gives you access to its Discord chat group, where you can chat with Johnny DC and Marvelous Joe. The Fantastic 4 tier gives you that and more with 2 bonus episodes each month, including bloopers and top 10 shows where Johnny and Joe count down your favourite Marvel and DC subjects. And finally, the X-Force tier makes you an executive producer of Dynamic Duel, where every month you help the host choose what to review and who to fight against each other. Check it out at patreon.com/Dynamic Duel. Pip pip cheerio.
Thanks, AJ9000, and thanks to everyone who supports the podcast. But with that out of the way,
quick to the No Prize. A No Prize is an award Marvel used to give out to fans. Our version, the Dynamic Duel No Prize, is a digital award that we post on Instagram and in our email newsletter for the person that we feel gave the best answer to our question of the week.
Last week's question was, who has been the most perfectly cast villain in Marvel and DC films, and why? We got a lot of answers here. Let's go ahead and run down the honorable mentions as well as the No Prize winner. Our first honorable mention goes to Corey Wooten, who said,
"Hey guys, Corey Wooten again. Still getting caught up. The most perfectly cast villain. Several good ones. I would have to go with Norman Osborn / the Green Goblin and the original Spider-Man. William Dafoe. Yeah, I think that's the best."
Yeah, I think I said this before in our Spider-Man review. I think the reason Willem Dafoe was so well cast in the role of Green Goblin in the Spider-Man movie, because the dude looks like a freaking goblin.
Damn.
In real life. He does. Look at him. He has just those creepy features that makes him a great villain, but it also makes him an interesting protagonist in those films where he shows up as the hero.
For a long time, fans have wanted him to play the Joker, which I think would be fantastic casting. But you also got to look at his performance as Green Goblin as pretty iconic. And, that was even more established when he returned to the role for the recent Spider-Man No Way Home film.
Oh, yeah, that was epic. He still got it after all these years.
He was better than ever.
For sure. Great answer, Corey Wooten. Our next honorable mention goes to Michael, who said,
"Hey, fellas, it's Michael. I think the best cast villain in a Marvel and DC movie would be Heath Ledger if the role hadn't actually killed him. So since we don't get to experience any more of Heath Ledger, I'm going to say it was Michael B. Jordan, because Killmonger was the perfect villain. He was relatable. He was understandable. His motivations were perfect. And it would have done that if Michael B. Jordan hadn't portrayed him so perfectly. So it's definitely him."
Yeah, I never really liked Killmonger from the comics as a character. I thought he was okay. Definitely not one of Black Panther's more interesting villains. But what the first Black Panther film did was make him entirely interesting. And I think like 99% of that has to do with Michael B. Jordan's performance as Eric Killmonger.
And the writing. I think the film really touched on a pulse regarding race relations in society during the time and still ongoing. So I think that's the primary reason why his characters seem to resonate throughout the film-going audiences.
Well, yeah, they made him feel a lot like Magneto.
Exactly, yeah, like Malcolm X.
Right. Great role, great performance. Our next honorable mention goes to Colby Hinches, who said,
"Hey boys, it's Colby Hinges. I do not want to hear about the Jokers or the Magnetos. No. The most perfectly cast villain has been Alfred Molina's Dr. Octopus. He knocked that out of the park."
So another Spider-Man villain here. You know, if you look at Dr. Octopus from the comics, especially in his early days, he was just a big fat nerd, you know, and they could have gone many different ways with this Dr. Octopus role for the Spider-Man 2 movie. But in casting Alfred Molina in the role of Doc Ock, they got this guy who was like a believable scientist and nerd and everything like that, but he was also a badass.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, Alfred Molina is a classically trained actor. He's not someone you typically think of as being cool, but I'll be damned if Doc Ock was not really cool in Spider-Man 2.
A lot of that has to do with the look and yeah, like you mentioned, the performance. It was just phenomenal. I totally believed that Alfred Molina was brilliant and menacing.
And kind of like how Willem Dafoe reprised his role in 2021's Spider-Man No Way Home, Alfred Molina again proved that after all this time, he still got it. I think he did really well revisiting the role.
Great answer, Colby. We want to give a quick shout out to Calvin John Della Merced, Matt Lamb, Michael Harold, and Scott Camacho for taking the time to visit our website and record an answer, which, if you're a Patreon member, you can listen to on our Discord server and discuss with us.
But the winner of this week's No Prize is Miggy Matanguihan, who said,
"Hey, what's up, guys? This is Miggy, and the DC villain that has been cast to perfection is Heath Ledger as the Joker. There's not much more I can say about it that isn't unique, but I will add that he is the standard for live-action Jokers in the same way that Christopher Reeve is the standard for live-action Superman, that like any Superman or Joker before or after them are compared to."
Joker is the greatest comic book villain of all time. So, of course, this answer
Debatable.
was going to get the win because he was also perfectly cast in Heath Ledger in the movie The Dark Knight. Of course, there have been many actors to successfully play the role as the Joker, including Cesar Romero, Jack Nicholson, Joaquin Phoenix, Mark Hamill. But Heath Ledger is a standout for just how far he took method acting in his performance. It totally shows, and it's totally great.
Yeah, a lot of people mentioned Mark Hamill in their response, but we were really looking for a live action performance. Voice acting is a completely different game. We agree that Mark Hamill is the perfect Joker voice, but I think down the line we'll be doing a question of the week asking for your favorite voice performances. But great answer, Miggy. Congrats again on winning this week's No Prize. If you, the listener, want a shot at winning your own No Prize, stay tuned to later on this episode when we'll be asking another question of the week. And now that that's done,
on to the news.
All right, this past Sunday, we got awesome news. Marvel Studios won another Oscar. This makes it the 4th Oscar win for the MCU. And DC came away with 0 Oscars, if I remember correctly, which makes this news all the more sweeter.
Oscars are so lame. Like, they're so irrelevant nowadays. It's ridiculous how irrelevant
you would not be
they
saying
become.
that if the Batman won any awards, which it didn't, by the way. Black Panther Wakanda Forever won for Best Costume Design. Ruth E. Carter accepted the award as the costume designer for that film, and she made history as the first Black woman to win 2 Oscars ever, and she was the first to win for both an original film and its sequel. So she's on a roll here. I'm really excited that she's going to be designing the costumes for the upcoming Blade movie starring Mahershala Ali. I think that movie's going to have some dope-ass costumes. Congrats to her and to the MCU in general and to Marvel fans. You did it. You did it.
Yeah, sure.
DC didn't
Whatever.
do anything.
I'm just going to say that the Batman was snubbed not only for Best Original Score and Best Adapted Screenplay, but also for motherfucking Best Picture. Because that was a fantastic film. Should have been nominated in more categories. You're lucky it wasn't, because it totally would have won.
I think it didn't get nominated for those things because the movie was too boring and too long.
Oh, I'm sorry. It wasn't like candy coated and just full of explosions every 5 seconds like a kiddie Marvel cartoon movie.
Yeah, that would have
DC
made the
fans
film
have
better.
more mature attention spans, apparently.
And bigger bladders. Just huge ass bladders, apparently.
Hell yeah.
Overall, this makes the 6th Oscar win for Marvel. The previous wins being for the first Black Panther film, which won Best Costume Design, Best Original Score, and Best Production Design. Prior to that, Spider-Man 2 won for Best Visual Effects, and Into the Spider-Verse and Big Hero 6 both won Best Animated Feature.
I mean, but does Big Hero 6 really count? I feel like it shouldn't count.
Yeah, it's an adaptation of a Marvel comic book.
But, like, barely.
Is the comic book named Big Hero 6?
It's Big Hero 6 in name only.
It's a loose adaptation, sure, but it's still an adaptation.
It hurts me to say that with Marvel's 6th Oscar, that makes us tied in terms of the amount of Oscars each comic book company has, because DC has 6 as well. We won 2 for the Joker for Best Actor and Best Original Score. We got 2 for The Dark Knight, Best Supporting Actor and Best Achievement in Sound Editing. Superman, the Richard Donner film, won for Visual Effects, and Batman 89 won for Art Direction.
So it looks like next year will be the tiebreaker when the Kraven the Hunter film wins Best Picture.
That was good.
Well, there's a high likelihood that the Spider-Verse sequel will win Best Animated Feature again.
Yeah, I mean, but there's also like The Flash winning Best Picture.
That's not going to happen.
You don't know.
They don't want Ezra Miller on the red carpet, okay? They'd come dressed as like a big peacock platypus or something and start choking people out.
Jeez. We'll see. We'll see.
But congrats again to Ruth E. Carter and Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Totally deserved.
I will admit that. Yeah, I mean, the film did have amazing costumes.
Yeah, I especially liked Shuri's Black Panther costume. You know, Namor's outfit was largely skin, but like the jewelry design that she made for the Talokans and everything, I thought was top notch. It was really cool.
Yeah, the headdresses, just everything about all of the costuming was fantastic.
But that brings us to our question of the week.
Which superhero costume has been the best in all of Marvel and DC live-action films and shows, and why?
Again, just limit your answers to superhero costumes. Let us know which specific instance was your favorite. Record your answer at dynamicduel.com by clicking on the red microphone button in the bottom right-hand corner, which will prompt you to leave us a voicemail. Your message can be up to 30 seconds long, and don't forget to leave your name in case we include you on the podcast. We'll pick our favorite answer and award that person a Dynamic Duel No Prize that we'll post to Instagram and our email newsletter. Be sure to answer before March 18th. In other Marvel news, we learned this past week that Jon Bernthal is returning as the Punisher for Daredevil Born Again on Disney+. Jon Bernthal is the actor who portrayed Frank Castle the Punisher in Daredevil Season 2, and he got 2 seasons of his own show. We reviewed all of those on this podcast. They were all great, with Jon Bernthal's performance really standing out as a highlight. Out of all the Punisher actors, he's really managed to capture that gruff sadness and like underlying rage that exists within the character. He's a fantastic actor, and it's just so relieving that he's coming back as the character.
Yeah, because a lot of characters from the Netflix shows are not returning, such as Foggy Nelson and Karen Page.
Yeah, right. Yeah, played by Eldon Henson and Deborah Ann Wall, respectively. That was heartbreaking to hear because I thought both actors did a tremendous job in their roles as Foggy Nelson and Karen Page. I'm not sure why Marvel isn't bringing those guys back for this first season of Born Again. It's possible that they're just going in a completely different direction with the character of Matt Murdock. But we've gotten other reports, like there's a rumor going around that Jenna Ortega has been cast in that series, and people are saying that she's going to play White Tiger or something like that, which I don't know if I believe, but it would be extremely cool if that were to happen. I'm wondering if maybe they didn't bring back Karen Page for this first season because Daredevil already kind of has a romantic interest in Jennifer Walters' She-Hulk, which we first got to see in the first season of the She-Hulk Attorney at Law television series.
A lot of people got excited when the news came out that Jon Bernthal was returning as the Punisher. But honestly, like what they've done with the Kingpin and Daredevil on Disney+, I am not looking forward to seeing what they do with the Punisher.
Oh, that could be interesting. Although, I'll say that I don't think that outside of the Kingpin maybe being like a little bit overly powered on the Hawkeye television show, I don't think Charlie Cox was all that different in the She-Hulk show than he was in his own Daredevil show. I mean, the tone of the series itself was different, but I don't think his performance was all that different.
I just feel like it's going to be a very different Punisher than what we had in the past.
Hopefully not, but I do hope that we get to see him in more Punisher action than we got to see from his own series, because admittedly, Punisher seasons 1 and 2 were a little bit light in Punisher action, the kind of over-the-top violence that we get to see in the comic books month to month.
Yeah, we're definitely not getting that here.
You don't know. I mean, they're producing mature content for Disney Plus now.
Oh, wait, is this going to be TVMA?
That I don't know, but I mean, you could see the Netflix shows on Disney Plus right now, which were definitely TVMA.
That's fair. That's true.
So we'll see. I'm wondering now if they're going to bring back Kristen Ritter as Jessica Jones and Mike Coulter as Luke Cage. I'd like to see both of those actors return. Finn Jones, not so much, but then again, if he wanted to show up as a cameo to mentor a Lin Lee version of Iron Fist, I think that would be pretty cool. But here's hoping that everything comes out awesome for this Born Again series. It's supposed to come out next year, allegedly, so can't wait to see it. But I think that does it for all the comic book movie news for this episode, so let's go ahead and move into our main event, where we find out who would win in a fight between the Weather Wizard and the Absorbing Man. Weather Wizard versus Absorbing Man. As I mentioned at the top of this episode, it's a guy who can control the elements versus a guy who can become the elements, which should be pretty interesting. Now, this episode, of course, is in lead up to our 325th episode, which will be a team duel between the Flash Rogues and the Brotherhood of Mutants.
Yeah, Weather Wizard being one of the Flash's rogues. Now, if I'm being 100% transparent, it was pretty hard coming up with a match for the Weather Wizard. Of course, the perfect match for him probably would have been Storm from the X-Men, but of course, we pit her previously in a duel against Black Lightning.
Right, yeah, and I had a really hard time coming up with an additional option for Weather Wizard, but I was pretty happy when we and the executive producers settled on Absorbing Man, although in an ideal world, we would have pit Absorbing Man against Metamorpho, I think.
Who previously went up in a duel against the Super Skrull.
Which was a horrible pairing. I think we put those two together largely because they kind of look like composite characters. They have this like weird patchwork composition to them, but like powers levels wise, they were pretty off.
But because we don't repeat characters in duel episodes, because a large part of this show is really just educating people on the characters, and there's really no need to do that twice, we ended up with this pairing, and I'm pretty happy with it, honestly.
Yeah, at the very least, the speculation on how the fight will go should be interesting and fun.
Yeah, totally.
But let's go ahead and turn to our sentient duel simulator, Alfred Jarvis 9000. AJ, tell our listeners how you go about determining a winner in our duel matchups.
Yes, of course, sir. The way I determine a winner between the contestants is by running 1,000 Monte Carlo simulations using the character's statistics. A Monte Carlo simulation is a probabilistic model used to determine outcomes through random sampling. In this case, I randomize the statistics along a normal distribution as a way to simulate the many variables that can occur during battle. The stat parameters are based on the official Marvel power grid from which the DC characters' statistics are extrapolated. Additional stat categories are included such as range, damage potential, versatility and perception in order to create a more detailed and accurate simulation. The results of the 1,000 simulations provide a percentage of wins for each character. The contestant with the higher percentage is declared the victor, as they have a higher probability to win any given battle. In an equitable pairing, neither character should win 100% of the matches. The comic book stories have shown that there's even a way for Batman to defeat Superman, so the confidence rate of my method falls in line with the precedents that have been established in the source material. My mathematical simulations are without subjectivity or bias. Feats are not the sole consideration, nor are fan votes tabulated for determination of the winner.
Thanks, AJ9000. Before we run the simulations, though, we like to break down each character's histories and abilities before improvising a scenario on how we imagine one of the 1,000 simulations would play out beat for beat. And I believe it's your turn to go first.
Right, yeah, let me go ahead and tell you all about the Absorbing Man's backstory. Now, Carl Creel was born in the Bronx borough of New York City. His mother died when he was just a child, and he was left in the custody of his physically abusive father. When Carl was finally old enough to fight back against his dad at the age of 16, he was kicked out of their house and forced to live on the streets and his local gym. At the gym, he discovered a talent for boxing and began training while also breaking into houses and cars to get by. Eventually, he began a career as a professional boxer where he would unleash his inner anger against his opponents, earning the nickname Crusher Creel. His reputation as a strong fighter earned him a spot as an enforcer for the criminal mob boss known as the Owl, though eventually he was arrested and imprisoned for aggravated assault. While in prison, Carl was discovered by the Asgardian god of mischief, Loki, whom you can learn more about in our Ares vs. Loki Duel episode. Looking for a brute to imbue with incredible power to take on his brother Thor, Loki slipped a magic potion into Carl's water, granting the inmate the ability to manifest the physical properties of anything he touched. Using this power to turn his form into steel, Carl escaped prison and hid in a swamp where Thor eventually found him. The two battled to a standstill as Carl absorbed the might of Thor's Uru metal hammer Mjolnir. But in their second encounter, Thor got Carl to absorb and take on a gaseous state, and Carl dissipated into the atmosphere. You can learn more about Thor the God of Thunder in our Wonder Woman vs. Thor Duel episode. Eventually, Loki reconstituted Carl and brought him to Asgard to aid the God of Mischief in taking over the Realm Eternal. Carl got cocky during their attempted coup, however, and challenged Odin himself, the ruler of the Asgardians, who simply dispatched Carl into space. After a time floating out there, he managed to hitch a ride on a passing comet and landed back on Earth, where he encountered the Hulk, and the two fought. Carl stood up to the green hero by absorbing the Hulk's strength, but lost it when he made contact with the Hulk as he was transforming back into Bruce Banner, and he got himself crushed under a boulder he was holding. Loki freed Carl to take on Thor again on several occasions, but Thor tricked him into absorbing water at one point, and later he got him to absorb a cardboard replica of Mjolnir.
Wait, so Absorbing Man can't hold liquid form?
He can, but he has to concentrate. Later, when going up against the Hulk again, Carl lost when taking on the properties of glass and getting shattered. Tired of fighting and losing, Carl exiled himself to Easter Island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. When the Hulk found himself coincidentally in the same location, Carl tried to absorb the whole island itself, becoming gargantuan, but losing his identity along the way as he slowly became the island. After regaining his sense of self and returning to his normal form, he came back to the US ready for vengeance. It wasn't long though until Carl was summoned alongside a host of Earth's heroes and villains by the all-powerful Beyonder to take part in a grand experiment between good and evil called the Secret Wars. You can learn more about this event in our Dr. Manhattan vs. Molecule Man Duel episode. But during his time on Battleworld where the Secret Wars were held, Carl met and fell in love with the She-Hulk villain named Titania. Upon their return to Earth, the two became a couple and were recruited into the supervillain team called the Masters of Evil, led by Baron Zemo. And though they were part of that nefarious group for a while, they still took the time to go on their own small heists together, battling the likes of Spider-Man and Ant-Man and the Wasp along the way. Carl and Titania eventually got married and settled down, retiring from supervillainy. Eventually, however, Titania came down with cancer, and the couple fell on hard times. Carl became highly addicted to painkillers and had to resort to working as an enforcer for the Owl again. One of Carl's associate mobsters unwittingly tricked him into turning himself into cocaine and then sold his cocaine form around New York City, causing anyone who snorted him to gain a portion of his power.
What?
Eventually, Carl reconstituted himself in the sewers and went after the Owl for revenge, but Spider-Man got him to absorb 2 explosively reactive chemicals to stop him. Later, when Odin's brother, the god of fear known as the Serpent, was released, he sent 7 mystical warhammers to Earth that were possessed by evil spirits. After Titania discovered the Hammer of Skirn, she came under the control of the Breaker of Men spirit, and she led her husband Carl to another hammer possessed by Greythoth, the Breaker of Wills. Alongside Juggernaut, Atuma, Grey Gargoyle, Thing, and Hulk, they became the elite guardsmen of the Serpent, collectively called the Worthy. When Thor and Earth's heroes fought and defeated the Serpent, the Worthy's hammers were relinquished and the spirit of Greythoth left Carl. Eventually, he and Titania went back to their old criminal habits, and Carl was apprehended and forced to join a clandestine US military organization called Shadow Base, which was tasked with bringing down the Hulk. Fighting the Green Behemoth at the base where Bruce Banner's gamma bomb was originally detonated, Carl absorbed most of the radiation from Hulk's body, as well as all the ambient radiation at the test site. Inadvertently, he also absorbed the corruption of the One Below All, a personification of destruction and hate who had been manipulating Hulk at the time. After getting shunted to the One Below All's domain, the Below Place, Carl surrendered his gamma radiation that he absorbed back into the Hulk so that the Hulk could take down the One Below All. In the aftermath, Carl and Titania joined Gamma Flight, another organization tasked with locating the Hulk and handling other gamma-related issues, such as stopping a rogue government agency that was experimenting with gamma radiation on a small town. And of course, you can learn more about the Hulk in our Doomsday vs. Hulk Duel episode. That's it for his history. Powers-wise, the Absorbing Man can embody the physical properties of anything he touches, including animate and inanimate matter, and even types of energy. His entire body becomes composed of what he comes into contact with, and he retains his normal sentience via the magical nature of his powers. When absorbing the properties of organic beings, he can take on their physical traits, such as enhanced strength, agility, or speed, which is how he can go toe-to-toe with the Hulk or Thor. If Absorbing Man concentrates while absorbing objects with greater mass than himself, he can increase his own mass to become of comparable size and density, such as becoming as tall as a skyscraper if he absorbs a skyscraper.
Okay.
Basically, with enough concentration, his body not only takes on the physical traits of things, but also their appearance in large part.
I guess it's magic. I guess there's no real science behind it.
Yeah,
sure.
Of course. When transmuting himself into non-solid forms of matter or energy, Absorbing Man has to concentrate on retaining his human form, otherwise he'll dissipate. If and when he is ever dispersed, he can reconstitute his body over time, sometimes as quickly as a matter of minutes. Once he discards a form, he has to make contact with that matter or energy again in order to reassume that form. Absorbing Man's power is highly unstable, however, and he can inadvertently take on the physical properties of things he doesn't mean to by coming into contact with them by surprise. The ball and chain that was shackled to him in prison can also morph with him, along with anything he was wearing at the time he drank Loki's magic potion. He's adept at using his ball and chain as a flail weapon, and he's very adept at hand-to-hand fighting, specifically boxing. And that's the Absorbing Man.
What is his ball and chain made of?
Normally iron, and so he can basically turn into an iron form whenever he wants to, just by taking on the properties of his iron ball and chain in its regular state.
Good. I like iron. That's what I want to hear.
No, you don't. You don't like iron.
I love iron.
Okay, you'll see. Fucking liar.
Well, let me tell you about the DC character in this fight, the Weather Wizard. Now, Mark Martin and his brother Clyde were born brilliant, though Mark always seemed to come up short of his brother's intelligence. While Clyde grew to be a renowned scientist, Mark turned to a life of crime. After being arrested for his actions, Mark escaped custody while being transported to Tri-State Prison. Having nowhere to go but to his brother Clyde's home, Mark arrived to find his brother dead from a heart attack. And though it has been rumored amongst the criminal underworld that Mark killed his brother, it's unclear as to whether Mark spread those rumors himself to bolster his notoriety. Mark discovered in Clyde's home that his brother had been experimenting with eolic energy and had discovered how to control the weather.
What is eolic energy?
Eolic.
Eolic.
It's essentially a fancy way of saying wind energy.
All right.
Now, stealing his brother's notes, Mark used his own ingenuity to craft a rod, or wand, to harness the energy necessary to manipulate the weather in his vicinity, and he began a new criminal career as the costumed villain, Weather Wizard. After a revenge plot to kill the police officers that arrested him was foiled by the Flash, Mark became a recurring villain of the hero, who you can learn more about in our Flash vs. Quicksilver episode. After several defeats, Mark successfully created a weather control station in Goldville, Wyoming, to control the weather on a larger scale, turning the large county of Oakley into a frozen wasteland cut off from the rest of the country. Intending to hold the county's nice weather for ransom and use the money to build more weather stations across the country, his plan was eventually thwarted by Kid Flash and Elongated Man. Not long after, Mark traveled to Gotham City, believing the powerless Batman would be unable to stop him, though he was proven wrong. While incarcerated afterward, Mark joined up with other Flash villains to form a villains club known as the Rogues. Mark reformed and retired for a short time after the Flash's death during the Crisis on Infinite Earths event, though he rejoined the Rogues later in planting bombs across the country, as they were manipulated by the demon Neuron in helping him emerge fully powered from hell. Mark died in the ordeal, though the Flash managed to trick Neuron into returning Mark and the other Rogues who died back to life. The Rogues disbanded for a time after the Underworld unleashed, until the Flash villain Blacksmith formed her own version of the team, of which Mark became a member. It was through Blacksmith that Mark learned that he had a son named Josh from a one-night stand with a Keystone police officer. His son Josh, he learned, was born with the innate metahuman ability to control the weather. Mark attempted to kidnap Josh and kill and dissect him to gain insight on how he could also control the weather without his wand, but after looking into his son's eyes and seeing his brother Clyde's, he wasn't able to go through with it. Blacksmith's Rogues team eventually disbanded, and the original group joined together once again, including Mark. The Rogues were approached by the villain Inertia, a clone of Bart Allen, aka Impulse, from the future, with a plan to kill the Flash, who, unbeknownst to the Rogues at the time, was a slightly older version of Bart Allen. You can learn more about Bart in our Impulse vs. Speed episode. Inertia informed Mark that he was actually a metahuman with weather manipulation powers who used his wand simply as a psychological crutch. After breaking Mark's wand, Inertia used 30th century psychiatry techniques to break down Mark's mental blocks and allow him to control the weather without the wand, though he still liked to hold the wand. Mark and the Rogues were successful in killing the Flash, though he and the others regretted doing so when they realized it was the young Bart Allen. Mark in particular because he was reminded of his son. Feeling betrayed, Mark and the Rogues eventually went after Inertia in revenge. Before they could, however, the villain Libra of the Secret Society of Supervillains, of which Inertia was a member, attempted to recruit the Rogues to their cause, though the Rogues rejected this offer. In retaliation, Libra kidnapped Mark's son Josh and threatened to kill him. Mark tried to bluff, saying he killed his brother Clyde and didn't care if his son died as well. Inertia called Mark's bluff and killed Josh in front of him, at which point Mark and the other Rogues killed Inertia, getting their revenge. In post-Flashpoint continuity, Mark's history remained largely intact, though his name was changed to Marco Martin, and his brother became Claudio, both heirs within a Latino crime family, and Claudio's wife Elsa was revealed as the one who murdered Marco's brother. Marco tried to kill Elsa in revenge while also committing suicide by holding onto her while summoning lightning to hit them both, though Marco survived. And that's largely his history up to this point. Powers-wise, the Weather Wizard is able to project an energy that can create any atmospheric or weather effect over a small area for a limited period of time. He can create rain, hail, snow, fog, smog, ice, hurricane-force winds, tornadoes, and lightning especially. Through wind manipulation, he's able to fly, and he can create weather effects indoors as well as outdoors. He used to have a mental connection to his wand, which he was able to use to manipulate the weather even when he wasn't holding it, though he no longer needs the wand for his power. The wand itself is now more of a long rod, which he can use offensively like a bowstaff or to channel his lightning and powers. Lastly, he has a genius-level intellect, particularly when it comes to mechanical engineering and meteorology. And that's Weather Wizard.
Does he use his bowstaff wand like a martial artist?
I've not seen him do that, but he could use it as a weapon. He's not twirling it around like Donatello or anything like that. More just like a long club.
The way I'm choosing to kind of understand his power set is basically Storm, but less cool. And with a big stick with which he's compensating for something. So, there you go.
All right. Well, now that we've got their histories and abilities out of the way, let's speculate on how one of the 1,000 simulated matches will go. The winner is determined by simulations, not this speculation, but it's fun to imagine how this fight could play out. Alfred Jarvis 9000, what are the rules of our speculation?
Well, I should say there are no rules, other than the characters have no prior knowledge of the other going into the fight. All they are aware of starting out is that the other character is a threat that needs to be eliminated. For the speculation, the contestants will begin approximately 50 meters apart in a nondescript environment that will have no bearing on the match itself, as no environmental statistics are considered in my simulations. The contestants must earn victory on their own merit.
All right, then let's get into it. Weather Wizard and the Absorbing Man meet on the battlefield. Who goes first?
I think Weather Wizard would go first because he has longer range attacks than Absorbing Man. How even long is Absorbing Man's ball and chain?
I would say it's depicted as being probably like a couple of yards or meters at max. Not too long.
Okay, so Weather Wizard starts by raising his staff in the air and summoning like a cover of dark, stormy clouds above the battlefield, all right? And he's going to twirl his staff and it's going to send over a hurricane-force gust of wind right at Absorbing Man, just sending him tumbling backward.
Okay, well, as Absorbing Man feels this wind force pushing him over, he's going to grab his ball and chain weapon, which is made out of iron, and he's going to take on the properties of that metal. So the wind isn't going to knock him down when he's made out of iron, and he's going to charge toward Weather Wizard through this hurricane force wind, and he's going to swing the ball and chain at him, just clocking Weather Wizard right in the head and pretty much killing him on the spot.
Yeah, it's going to take forever for Absorbing Man to reach Weather Wizard through that wind and through how slow his iron form is probably going to be. So as he's slowly moving towards him, Weather Wizard's going to summon a small dark cloud directly over Absorbing Man, and that's just going to unleash a torrent of rain that just starts causing him to rust in his iron form.
Rust. It's not the Tin Man from Wizard of Oz over here, okay? Absorbing Man can move in any form, so if he turns to rust, then he's just now Rust Man, and Weather Wizard is going to get tetanus. So good job with that. Because by the time he reaches Weather Wizard, he's fully rusted. But that's not going to stop him from knocking Weather Wizard's wand out of his hand using his ball and chain. And that rusty chain is going to slice Weather Wizard's hand open.
All right, how long does it take for Lockjaw to set in with tetanus?
A couple days, I think.
Well, he's going to be fine. That's plenty of time.
Damn it.
All right, so Weather Wizard, he's going to want some distance between him and Absorbing Man. So, he doesn't need his wand to use his powers. So Weather Wizard is going to generate a tornado around him that's going to lift him into the sky, while Absorbing Man, he's probably trying his hardest just to hold on to his ball and chain before it flies away.
No. Absorbing Man is going to absorb the tornado.
What?
He's done that to Thor before. So he takes on this wind form where he's slightly gaseous and mostly transparent, with his lower body looking like a small whirlwind. And in his tornado form, Absorbing Man's going to spin his ball and chain around his head, and he's going to create a counter tornado, spinning the opposite direction, that crashes into and cancels out Weather Wizard's tornado, causing the guy to just fall out of the sky to his death.
How is a ball and chain going to do that? Is that also made of wind?
Yes.
Okay. So Weather Wizard is falling, but as he's falling, he's also going to cause a massive snow dump to fall with him, like an avalanche, right? And that's going to break his fall, but it's also going to bury Absorbing Man's wind form. And since Absorbing Man, is just surrounded by all the snow, he's going to be forced to take its properties on, and he's just going to become Frosty the Snowman.
Frosty? Dude, if Absorbing Man becomes Frosty the Snowman, then he's going to become the most epic, badass Frosty you've ever seen. Because, he's going to absorb the properties of snow, but he's also going to absorb, all the snow that's around him, this avalanche's worth of snow. And he's going to build on his snow mass, and that's going to turn him into, giant Frosty the Snowman. He's going to emerge from under this snowfall like a frost giant, swinging around his ice ball and chain. And the ball and chain is going to have icicle spikes on it.
Fuck!
You fucked up.
All right, let me think. Frosty melted from heat in the movie. So that's what's going to happen here. Like Weather Wizard, he's going to generate like a large amount of heat, and he's just going to send it at Absorbing Man in like these heat waves. So right as that spiked ball and chain is about to smash Weather Wizard, it evaporates into water vapor. And so does Absorbing Man.
Into water vapor?
Yeah.
Good move. Okay, so Absorbing Man is water vapor.
Yeah, and his ball and chain are like dissipated right now in the atmosphere.
Okay, but before Absorbing Man dissipates into the air, he's going to think quickly, and he's going to absorb the heat from the heat waves. So he's back in his normal-looking form now, normal-sized, but he's super hot to the touch, which you can tell because all this steam is coming off of his body. And he's steaming angry, you know? He's going to rush the Weather Wizard and give him the old jab, jab, cross, straight, hook combo using fists that are as hot as irons.
Why didn't he just turn into like a bunch of hot air? I don't get that.
No, he absorbed just the heat. Like over time, he's been able to choose what physical properties he absorbs of what he makes contact with. So in this case, he's just going to absorb the heat part, but not the air part.
Dumb. All right, so Weather Wizard, you know, he's probably on the ground right now with like a busted face. But I'm going to say he lands right by his wand that was knocked away earlier, which is more like a long metal staff. And from the ground, he's going to swing it right into Absorbing Man's temple, like on the side of his head, knocking him out.
No, Absorbing Man laughs at that. He's way more formidable than that. In fact, like he would just grab the rod before it even hit him. And then he's going to absorb the rod. What metal is it made out of?
I don't know that. Probably like steel or something like that.
Okay, so Absorbing Man becomes steel, and with his new steel body, he's just gonna elbow drop right onto Weather Wizard's head, just shattering the dude's skull, brains in a puddle, match is over.
You've fallen into my trap.
Fuck you, there's no trap. What trap?
Okay, so Absorbing Man becomes steel or whatever metal the wand is made of. We know it's conductive of electricity, right? So therefore, Absorbing Man is a conductor of electricity. And as soon as he becomes this metal, Weather Wizard is just going to generate like a massive lightning blast that surges through Absorbing Man and just fries him. And that gives Weather Wizard the win.
No, because Absorbing Man just becomes lightning.
No. This bolt hit him by surprise. Like, lightning moves way too fast for Absorbing Man to react to it. Plus, like, even if he did become lightning, Weather Wizard is immune to lightning.
He is?
Yeah. That's why he didn't die when Elsa got struck by lightning.
Oh. I'm pretty sure Weather Wizard is already dead from a shattered skull.
Nah.
Brains in a puddle. Agree to disagree, okay? We'll leave it there. Either one of two scenarios happens. Either Absorbing Man, who's made out of steel, elbow drops and kills Weather Wizard, or Weather Wizard sends a surge of lightning through the now conductive Absorbing Man, ending the match. We'll go ahead and find out which of these cases happens by inputting the character stats, running 1000 simulations, and coming back with a winner. Alfred Jarvis 9000, take it.
Inputting data, running calculations, processing results, simulations complete.
All right, that was a pretty fun speculation. I figured it would be. As we mentioned before, it was really hard to find someone for Weather Wizard to fight, but I think in Absorbing Man, we came up with one of the most fun matches that he possibly could have had.
Yeah, it was fun. Weather is just fun to play around with.
I think what ended up being interesting about the stats for these characters is how they compensated for each other. They're not really similar statistically. You know, you look at Absorbing Man, who's, off the charts in terms of durability, versatility, and he's much better at fighting than Weather Wizard.
Yeah, he's much more physical, and we knew that was going to happen going into this match. I figured Weather Wizard would compensate in other areas, which he did, in stats such as range and intellect. We also said that Weather Wizard, because he could fly, is faster, more evasive than Absorbing Man. Definitely, because Absorbing Man actually likes to take punishment. So
he's a
absorb
tank.
It.
Yeah. What surprised me, honestly, was Weather Wizard's strength due to the fact that tornadoes can lift a shit ton of weight. Really, Absorbing Man is only as strong as his opponents, except for, the weaker ones. He's a physical specimen on his own, but on the level of like Captain America or so. But he's not superhumanly strong unless he's going up against like the Hulk or Thor or something like that. Like I would even put him up against someone like Darkseid or something like that, because he'd be able to match Darkseid's strength And it would probably be cool to see him like absorb the Omega effect or something like that. But it's interesting how Absorbing Man's stats change depending on who he's fighting. And that was definitely reflected here. So considering all that, Jonathan, who do you think won this match?
I mean, I think it's going to be Weather Wizard.
Well, what do you know? You don't know shit.
I think I know more than our Instagram followers, 74% of whom chose Absorbing Man as the winner for this, which, what?
I mean, it makes sense. Absorbing Man is a Hulk and Thor villain, so you'd consider him to be on that level. Weather Wizard has like storm level powers, but I don't think she could contend with Hulk or Thor.
Yeah, but I mean, like, Weather Wizard, I think, has been in more like media from the cartoons and the Flash TV show. I would have figured he would have won the popularity contest. That typically is the Instagram poll.
Dude, Absorbing Man was the main villain of the 2003 Ang Lee Hulk movie, and he was also in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. television show.
That's right. I never saw the S.H.I.E.L.D. television show, but I forgot he was the bad guy, Bruce Banner's father, in the Ang Lee Hulk film.
Yeah, that was weird. That was
pretty cool. That was cool.
The Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. version of the Absorbing Man was actually a lot closer to the comics. He was pretty cool in that show, actually.
Interesting. That's cool.
But let's go ahead and see who won. Alfred Jarvis 9000, the results, please.
Here you are, sir.
Okay, so the winner between Weather Wizard and Absorbing Man is the Weather Wizard.
Hell yeah! Hell yeah!
Yep, he won this one. Out of 1,000 matches simulated, Weather Wizard won 58.8% of them, or 588 matches out of 1,000. Whereas Absorbing Man only won 41.2% of the matches, or 412 out of 1,000.
Are you surprised by this?
Honestly, I thought it was going to be close. I think I would have been surprised no matter who won. But what it really came down to was range and intellect. Those two stats were areas that Weather Wizard came out way on top. Absorbing Man was way more durable. But when you consider that Weather Wizard could pretty much keep Absorbing Man at bay all day long, and the fact that he's incredibly smart and probably would be able to figure out how to use the elements against Absorbing Man in some like scientific way, it kind of makes sense considering Absorbing Man is kind of a dum-dum.
Yeah, I mean, if the Flash can't touch Weather Wizard, it's going to be really hard for Absorbing Man too.
Yeah, I mean, that ball and chain only extends so far, you know? So looking at the results, it kind of makes sense. You know, if Absorbing Man turns into water or metal, he's done for with Weather Wizard's lightning. And if Absorbing Man turns into lightning, it's not going to affect Weather Wizard. So,
right, and Weather Wizard loves lightning. Like, that's his go-to move.
Yeah.
The results make sense to me.
I got to say, this sucks for me because Absorbing Man has always been one of those villains that has never really been too successful in the comics, but I've always really enjoyed when he showed up because the fights against the heroes, you know, are always going to be fun. It's always interesting to see what forms he's going to take on and how the heroes are going to kind of play chemistry with him in order to win, you know?
Didn't you say Captain America beat him once by throwing a pillow at him?
That was the Nuff Said Christmas special. He threw cotton balls at him. Yeah. And then Absorbing Man became cotton. I don't think that's a good case study. But that does it for this duel. Let us know what you guys thought about the results by writing to us at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com or by visiting us on Instagram or Twitter. You can find links to all of our accounts by checking out our show notes or visiting our website, dynamicduel.com.
And on our site, you can also find a link to our Patreon page where you can join our Dynamic 2.0 tier and chat with us and fellow listeners, our Fantastic 4 tier, which gets you bonus content each month, or our X-Force tier that makes you an executive producer of this podcast. If you can't join Patreon, you can still support the show by signing up for our e-newsletter, also at dynamicduel.com.
Or by rating the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, or on our website. In our next episode, it's going to be a review. We're going to discuss the upcoming DC film, Shazam! Fury of the Gods, which comes out this week.
Yeah, I'm super excited for it. It's the first theatrical release for DC this year. And I loved the first Shazam movie. And based on social media reactions, this movie is even better than the first one.
I'm sure it'll be a good time, but, you know, check your expectations, as always. What I'm interested in is seeing how it'll compare to Black Adam.
Ooh, yeah, that's going to be an interesting comparison for sure. But that does it for this episode. We want to give a big thanks to our executive producers, Ken Johnson,
John Starosky,
Zachary Hepburn,
Dustyn Balcom,
Miggy Matanguihan,
Brandon Estergard,
Nathaniel Wagner,
Levi Yeaton,
Nick Abanto,
Austin Wesolowski,
AJ Dunkerley,
Scott Camacho,
Gil Camacho,
and Adam Speas for helping make this podcast possible. And we'll talk to you guys next week.
Up, and away.
True believers.